Welcome to the Balanced Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Matt Southam. Here, we delve into candid conversations with entrepreneurs, exploring both their business journey and their secrets to maintaining mental well-being. As we navigate the balance of ambition and inner peace, I hope you find insights, inspiration, and invaluable takeaways in every episode. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Dan. Welcome to the show today. I want to start just by asking you, how did you get into leadership development?
Hi, Matt. Yeah, thanks for inviting me on. We've been looking forward to having the conversation with you. How did I get into developing leaders and managers in organizations? Oh, it's an easy but a long question to answer, probably. So I think the catalyst was a few years back. I joined a very successful consultancy working with big businesses, enterprise scale, majority, Vodafone, BT, those kinds of firms, building out programs, helping leaders and managers to create environments and cultures that ultimately the end game to sell more, to get better customer service in place and all of those things. Was fairly successful at it, and it was a point in time from a culmination of other jobs I've done, leading teams, leading divisions in firms, and I just thought now is the time to branch out on my own, put my own spin on it, and bring what I like to call the different edge to, in essence, leadership development, which can be quite dull, which can be quite staid when you talk about training, and I've got my own views on it. So I kind of created different edge leadership last year, and enjoying the journey at this early stage.
Yeah, I mean, I guess working with leaders, I think one big difference I often sort of hear about is managers and leaders. And lots of people get promoted through that management role and they've got that on their title, but they've never been taught how to be a leader.
Yeah. And then you throw up the old adage of, can you teach someone to lead? Are they a natural born leader? And all that kind of thing. So look, I'm really clear, like Elon Musk is not the benchmark of leadership, right? The Steve Jobs of these world, they're kind of freaks of nature that walk among us with these intelligent brains and so you've got this kind of, there's so many books, Matt, and so much literature and stuff on leadership. And to be honest, if I can swear, half of it's bullshit. It's like, how many models do you need in order to kind of get people galvanized around an idea? So a lot of my principles, and you'd have been the same, right? You probably work for organizations, and as a business owner yourself, you probably need to galvanize the troops in order to achieve something. Mm-hmm. Well, for me, it comes down to the first thing is around that connection. And connection is a big word when I work with leadership groups. It's connection, first of all. Ironically, it's connection with yourself. And a lot of leaders I work with, managers, to your original question, they're kind of struggling with that thing. You're right. They get promoted on the fact that they were really bloody good at what they did. And particularly with sales teams, for example, the top seller is the top seller for a reason, right? Because they love sales, they've got a craft, they've learned it over time, and all of a sudden they've got this offer that makes life a little easier because the salary is bigger. They don't have to go out and kind of really earn a crust, and they can now tell other people what to do. And lo and behold, they find themselves as a sales manager looking after 15 people, and now they're on that ladder to, if I can just become the sales leader, then I don't have to do this element of the job. And that's what I kind of, they've got a very difficult job. I speak with a lot of managers and say, why are you doing it? And who are you, first of all, right? Because if all this went away tomorrow, the targets and the sales and the revenue, where they're solely focused on those things, and their week can be made or broken by whether they got that 1% increase.
Yeah.
Ultimately, who are you going home to? What do your family say about you? What do your kids say? That's the thing. So I work with a lot of leaders and management groups on, first of all, the I am. Who am I to start off with? That's our anchor, our foundation. And then question yourself, why are you in this position? Because if you take the opportunity to lead other people, that takes real guts. It takes real guts, and it takes trial and error, and it takes, like being a parent, you've got you got kids yourself, right? You kind of think you know the answer, or your experience indicates that you're kind of on a good track, and then all of a sudden you'll go, "Oh no, that wasn't the things to
No.
do." So there are amazing books on leadership, and you can see in action. But I always ask the question: how many great leaders have you worked for?
Yeah. I mean that
How,
is that big question, isn't it? I put a post up, funny enough, not connected to this on LinkedIn earlier on today. It was to do with
right?
recruitment and how, actually people don't just leave jobs. They leave bad management, bad leadership, and toxic culture.
Yeah,
So how do we change that? And my point was, because I'm quite into sort of culture. Actually, you can't have a bad culture and then take everyone go-karting once every 2 months and think that's going to solve it, because that isn't culture. That is just like a
yeah.
tick box. So a lot of it is that, yeah, that the leaders need to help frame the culture. They don't necessarily set it, I guess, but framing it.
Yeah, and you're right. You're absolutely right. And it's difficult, right? So if you work for a big FTSE firm, what influence can you really have over culture? And
Mm.
this is the thing. So HR teams are, they're lovely. There's lots of organisations with mission statements, but not many on a mission, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And and when it comes to HR teams coming up with values and things like that. They have long drawn out workshops on it. Um, I work with a lot of firms, and it's always my litmus test. Can you name your 5 values? And you look at the puzzled faces, and they go, "Oh, I think it's." And they kind of get round to it.
Mm.
So I love a quote by, I think it was Groucho Marx, who said, "I've got really strong values, but if you don't like those, I've got a few others." Um,
Yeah.
and that kind of sums it up for me, most organizations. So you're right. Around the culture, what I like to talk to teams around is team climate. So that little
Okay.
weather pattern, it's not across the whole UK, it's just in your little area. The
Yeah.
things you can influence, the tiny noticeable differences that you can make. And you can create your own kind of little ecosystem for people. And that's far more manageable, far more realistic. But it starts with some deep questions to ask yourself. And I often start with, what are the ground rules around here, around
Mm.
behavior? How would I, if I join your team tomorrow, how would I know what I would like above the line behavior and below the line? How would I know? And most people go, well, it's written down somewhere, I think, on a thing. And that's not it, right? And I tell you what people do, they observe and they look and they decide what those behaviors are. And it's unfortunately normally based on your worst behaving person when they go, look, it's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. So they go, well, they do that. So that's the lowest I can go. So I'll kind of sit in that pocket there. So yeah, culture for me, team climate starts with ground rules, starts with anchored behaviors. What are the things and how does that look? What does that look like? Because
Yeah.
again, I'm working with a team recently, and they said, look, we decided on 3 main anchors, and one of them was honesty. And it's great, isn't it, to have honesty on your book, because that's a really unique and individual thing. The fact that we've got to call out that we need to be honest is like maybe a telling sign. But however, then you're down into the granular of, well, what does honesty look and sound like around here then? How honest do we actually want to be with each other? If I were to, do I have
Mm.
permission to call you out on this particular thing? Because that's just me being, and there's a fine line between being an arse and being
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
then we're into your intent. So why are you telling me this thing? So it can get complicated, but it doesn't have to be difficult, if that makes sense. But
Yeah.
most leaders and most organizations don't lean into these questions and don't, first of all, create the space and the time just to sit and say, well, actually, look, we really need to get under the skin of what this means in this team, because everyone wants to be a high performing team. And they can watch as many videos of the All Blacks and the Lions as they like, but it doesn't translate into the insurance brokerage where you've got this person that doesn't speak to that person and this person doesn't like the way they've been
Yeah.
treated over their lunch breaks. So, yeah. So, what I do at different edges, I unpick some of that, I think, in a really human way. And I don't train people and I don't tell people and I don't sell to people, because who am I, right? They're doing the job. But what I do is I facilitate the space for them to challenge their thinking on some things, and they can then choose to shift. If they want to shift, then we can start to sculpt and craft what that might look like on a daily basis to get you where you want to be going.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. That you say, "Who am I to say?" But actually, you ask those questions, don't you, so that other
Yeah.
people start to think about it and make up their own mind. I mean, bizarrely, that's almost going back to the classic sales technique of asking questions to get the person to realise that they've got a problem and they need to solve it. But that's almost what's happening, but on a leadership role. And I love that about the honesty bit. And okay, how? Them, because lots of people come out with buzzwords, but when you question them on it, actually, what does it really mean?
Yeah, yeah. And then we go back to the guts of leadership, right? So, I can be quite blunt sometimes with groups. Ultimately, you've took the money, right? So in taking the money to do the role, there are some responsibilities and there's some things that you have to step up. And one is the people in your care, in your charge. There's some things you're going to have to go out on a limb and say and do. And fear is such a massive thing in organizations. Talk about kind of school. School. I've got 4 young boys, and they're all at school, and I find myself fighting against the ethos of the school in terms of what do we taught at school, Matt? Don't copy anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, and don't copy anyone, and work on your own. Keep your which is the complete opposite of how to get on in an organization
Yeah.
where you need collaboration. You need to ask people. You see things that are really good. You go, well, I'll do a version of that, and you need to involve others.
Yeah.
But we're taught to kind of make it on your own sort of thing. And when you get into leadership roles as well, there's that kind of the whole suit of armor. I'm the leader. I've got to come up with the questions. I can't be seen to be fallible here.
Mm.
Are you familiar with Brené Brown at all?
A little bit. Yeah,
Yeah,
slightly.
yeah. So the work of Brené Brown, I think, is amazing in terms of so one of our key topics around vulnerability, which is a bit of a again could be a very easy buzzword. We're a vulnerable group,
Yeah.
but to be vulnerable, and particularly as a guy, I've got to be honest, it takes some real guts and effort to be
Mm.
vulnerable. And then there's the kind of, well, what does vulnerable look like? How do we know? How do we know? So again, working with a small team at the moment, what's the opposite of vulnerability? Well, it's invincibility, and no one's invincible. So
No.
if I need people to move and connect towards me, and they can get on the bus and we can move together forward to achieve this thing, I've got to let down my guard a little bit and say, look, maybe I'm a bit worried this month. I've got bills to pay. I've got a mortgage. It's kind of,
Mm.
I'm on the hook as much as you are. And I want you to know that I feel it, because feeling's not normally allowed in organizations. We don't feel things. We,
Put it in a
so,
spreadsheet. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Put it in an email. If
Yeah.
you're feeling that. Yeah. And some of this stuff, 10 years ago, certainly when I was working with firms, it seemed very soft stuff, but it's just it's the human stuff.
Mm.
And that's what I try to do. And the experiences I try and create for leaders and managers is to tap into, well, what do you feel is the right thing? And if you feel it, and we all kind of feel it, guess what? Our intuitions might be right. So possibly we
Yeah.
need to have the conversation that moves us all forward. And if we're not willing to have that conversation, then what might happen as a result? And why aren't we? Well, that's an interesting question. Why aren't we willing to share that?
Mm.
Is the politics too deep? Is my fear of reprisal too deep? Had a conversation with a group the other week where they said that a lot of the senior managers were very scared to speak in front of the exco team. So they wanted to run a workshop, but the exco team didn't think it was their place to be in that workshop. So by definition, you sort this out amongst yourself. So how is that going to change? If someone from
Yeah.
the exco doesn't come in, and actually one of the senior leaders from the exco group said, actually, well, I hate getting up in front of speaking to people. I feel really nervous, but I get really dry mouth. I have to go to the toilet beforehand. I said, but you're choosing to now not be in the room with the guys that are scared to talk to you and thinking that. So it's you coming into the room and expressing, do you know what? I'm just the same as you. I feel the same as you, you know?
Mm.
And that connection is a real strong glue, I think, from when you talk about climate and culture. But you've got to be prepared to go there. Some aren't. Most aren't.
No, I guess it is that we are actually all quite similar. Regardless of your pay grade or position within the company, actually we all have those feelings, those worries, those
Yeah.
concerns, whether it's imposter syndrome, whether it's whatever it is, because we all know sometimes our decisions can affect the trajectory of the company or the people within it, and almost
Yeah.
a little bit scared to make them. But actually, that just means you should be more open and speaking with other people and working collaboratively, so you can actually make a decision that everyone's bought in on, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a fine line. I mean, I've literally just come off a call with a client, and I'd be very clear. This is not just about making people feel nice. It's about us being better.
Yeah.
So sometimes people are allowed to feel slightly uncomfortable. They are allowed to feel a little bit, oh, this is you're pushing me, because companies that are just really nice and have great cultures but don't sell anything don't last very long, right? So,
No.
um, and this is where you're just trying to find that balance all the time. Beating people with a stick will get you a result in the short term, as we know, but do you really want to show up every day? And that's kind of how you operate. And people leave eventually, and they'll go off and tell other people. Now you've got an attrition problem
Yeah.
and a recruitment issue. But by the other set, at the other scale, you have to have difficult, brave conversations to say this is not right.
No.
But often, back to my previous point, is often where's your anchor, where's your point of reference? This is not the behaviour we expect. Okay, well, how did I know that? Because you weren't brave enough to have the conversation with me in the first place. So yeah, moving people towards, and I think, I don't know about you, but I'd rather someone really be blunt and honest with me. I would trust their intent and their integrity, even if I didn't like the message.
Yeah. Yeah, it's much better to be upfront, and however uncomfortable it makes everyone feel, because it's often that the person saying it feels a bit uncomfortable, the person receiving it feels a bit uncomfortable,
Yeah,
but actually it does allow you to move forward.
yeah. And I think the people going into management roles, particularly, certainly leadership roles, there is an element of you get that two schools of thought. Some people go in and they just try and be everyone's friend just to get everyone on side. And then when the shit hits the fan and the numbers aren't there, then they turn into, right, we've got to do something. And they go, what an arse. Like, what's wrong with them?
Yeah.
So you'd rather come in with a straight back and go, look, I'm going to make some decisions. I'm going to have some conversations with people, and they are going to feel uncomfortable. But you'll see I'm not such a bad guy, because my intent and why I'm doing these things is to get us to where we need to go. And we're not there at the moment. So this is what needs to change. And creating that clarity. Again, it's a lovely line from Brené Brown, again, where she says, to be clear is to be kind.
Yeah.
But if you think about that ambiguity of, because the leader isn't strong enough to be really direct and clear on the message, you've then got people second guessing themselves. How do we do this? What's the permissions? And it creates anxiety for people. It creates that Sunday night thing. Oh, well,
Yeah,
that
the old
needs.
Sunday syndrome. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I used
I
to have
heard
a
a
lot of.
great quote, I had a great quote, which is along the lines of be kind always, be firm when you have to.
Yeah,
From the fact that actually that's what it is. You can be kind, but when you need to be firm, you're going to have to be.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And that's the thing. Leadership is a tough gig.
Yeah.
They say you take the money, you have to step up, and we don't take the money. Then go back to the job you used to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so I mean, I love it, because you get to, most organisations have got the same problems. They all think it's unique, and it is unique to their own context, absolutely. But we all want to sell more. We want our customers to love us. We want our processes and systems to be more streamlined and less of a pain in the arse. We want
Yeah.
more honest conversations. We want to know, how do I get to where I want to go, and how are you going to support me as a leader? The question I ask leaders is, how would working for you benefit me?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's
And
quite a
often,
tough question, isn't it?
yeah,
No.
how would it benefit me? Because that's what people think. Right?
Yeah.
It's great you're my leader, but what does that mean for me? And that's
Yeah.
leadership, right? It's about you, but it's not about you. You're in it to drive the business forward, to create that vision, that clarity, that strategic element. And managers are there. Back to also your question a long time ago, but the managers are there to then create the processes and the practices every day that contribute to that bigger vision. So management is about focusing people on the priorities and the task in hand. And leadership, for me, is a bit more about that kind of higher level, just bringing people towards the vision. Why are we here? Why are we showing up? And looking to create that bigger environment that kind of trickles down.
Yeah. You spoke about Sunday syndrome a minute ago, and you said, yeah, you used to get that. So, yeah, talk to me about Sunday syndrome. How do people overcome that, do you think?
They change jobs normally, don't they?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Work for a place that has better leaders, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, yeah, there is that. It's when it's not aligned. I always think about, so the things in my life, when, excuse me, when I'm aligned in terms of what I think and what I do, those things tend to go really well. You know, when I go, I'm definitely
Yeah.
going to go for a run. I went for a run. I feel great about it. But when I'm in my head going, I really shouldn't have that cake, and I have 3 of them, it's not aligned. I feel really a bit crappy about it.
Yeah.
So I think when you work in an organization, you have to feel trusted. You have to feel psychologically safe, which is again a bit of an HR buzzword. The work from Amy Edmondson, but what does that mean? Well, I want to be trusted. I want people to be honest with me. I want the politics to be small.
Mhm.
And when you tell me these things around my career progression, I want to believe that you have my best interest at heart, and you're not going to hang me out to dry at the first sign of danger. I'm working with a firm back end of last year, and they were really adamant on their behaviours. These are kind of non-negotiable. This is how we behave, integrity, all of these things, unless we're up against it the last week of the month, and then you can cut these corners, you can do this and you can do that. Now, how confusing is that, right? Um, and if I show up, now I'm trying to guess what's acceptable and what's not. That's
Yeah.
the anxiety. It's we're all on the lookout for danger, aren't we?
Yeah.
Where's the danger? And if you find yourself laying in bed at night, as I did with a couple of firms, where's the danger? Who's going to hang me out to dry? You know, I'm not everyone's cup of tea, Matt. I'm not a wallflower. I will kind of speak my mind. And then also you get people in leadership positions they're out of sync. They're in it for themselves,
Mm.
and great leaders aren't in it for themselves. They are in it for the greater good, how twee that might sound, but they do have the best interest of the people at heart, not just feathering their own nest and hanging people out to dry. So, and part of the different edge philosophy is I want sales leaders to lead with head, heart, and soul.
Yeah.
Of course, you've got to have that thinking. You've got to have that strategic thinking. You've got to think smartly. Heart is, what does it feel like? And soul is that intangible thing of what's it like around here? Why do we show up? What's the connection? I'm not a fan of we're a family, because I think that can be used as a bit of a psychological trick around, because people
Yeah.
don't, they don't sack the family, right? So, well, they might do, but, but head, heart, and soul, and I run very, very small retreats. We did 2 last year, very small groups, where we literally just go and walk and talk. We just go and walk and talk, and it's mainly men, I've got to be honest, but we walk and talk, and where's that soul part?
Mm.
Because I don't know about you running a business, it's so demanding,
Yeah.
so demanding. You've got to be really strategic with your time. You've got a wife or a husband or a partner and kids, and you start to lose yourself a little bit. Why did you start it? What's the priority?
Yeah.
When you're having breakfast and you're finding yourself on emails with a bit of toast in your hand and trying to get it's that wake up moment of,
Yeah.
yeah, things need to change. So if you're growing a business, you've got to be all in, but there is a cost and a consequence, and helping leaders find that soul part of them. All the wisdom. It's not me, right? There was these other guys before me, like there's Buddha, Jesus, these
Yeah.
well-known people. Got some some pretty kind of good ideas. You go,
Yeah.
yeah, that might have some legs.
That'll
It's
work.
lasting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm trying to just connect people back to that simplicity of, I show up. I can't really control the result, but I can control the things I can control.
Yeah.
Just taking the temperature down a bit on that stuff.
Yeah, I guess having those conversations. I mean, you do see it within organisations that people are either we say fast tracked, but they're fast tracked through all these management things because they've done different courses and almost you can see that they're in that leadership role as a stopgap to move to the next one, and therefore actually you don't lead, you just well in that role to try and get to the next step, and actually that doesn't benefit your team. Actually, you'd be better off being a better leader. And then nothing wrong with wanting to progress in your career, but actually you don't have to trample on other people on the way up.
Yeah, exactly. Because invariably they'll, on the way down, it's networks, right? So it's networks and connections. That's what makes the difference, particularly in this day and age.
Yeah.
And I don't give advice. I often get, well, what would you do? Well, I'm not you, so we can have a conversation about it. I think the number one thing for me is that curiosity as well as a leader. I always say, beware the experts. Beware the
Which is slightly
experts.
ironic, but yeah, I get it.
Well, what? Yeah. So, what is an expert? An expert, by definition, someone saying, "Well, I'm the expert," is saying, "My way, it's my way or the highway," and actually, what I call the curse of knowledge. Curse of knowledge. I know too much about a topic to be able to see the wood for the trees. So I think from leadership perspective, be curious. And my number one thing is I absolutely adore and love is questions, to the point of annoyance with my wife, certainly. But honestly, Matt, the ability to ask the right question to the right person at the right time can change your life.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is always about asking that right question. But how do you teach that? I mean, you just said you don't teach or advise, but how can people get better then at asking the right questions?
Well, they can test out things. Obviously, there's there's lots of different ways to look at it. There's a great guy, good book called Hal Gregerson, and he's got a book called, I think, The Question is the Answer. So I think we'll definitely recommend that. But I always start with teams around, before you answer a question, first of all, what is the question we're asking? We've got to solve, what's the question we're looking to solve? And we've often been
what's the real question behind the question?
Yeah, exactly. What's the real question we need to ask, and why aren't we asking it? To who do we need to ask it, and by when? And that takes a little longer, right? Because we're all kind of creatures of habit. We think we know the answer. Isn't it funny in organizations, and this is the thing I've experienced, particularly in meetings, that normally the most senior person goes first and we'll have a great, look, this is the idea, this is what I'm thinking. And the question is, what do you think?
Yeah. And
you get 8 people sitting going, that's a really good idea. Great. Let's go with that then. And we're off. Yeah. So leaders that speak last, that's a definitely a sign of the ego is quite small. I'll just be curious, lean in, and start off with possibilities. So if I were to ask you, Matt, what do you think the answer is? Now you might go, well, that's quite a benign question. It's not, but what does your brain do? And I go, what's the answer?
It tries to work out what the question is.
Tries to work out what the question is. And also, if I'm your boss and I go, well, what do you think? What's the answer?
Yeah. What am I meant to say here?
Right. What do I meant to say? And actually, if you think we'll go back to school days, what did you get rewarded for? You got rewarded for coming up with the answer.
Yeah.
Not the effort. They didn't really care about how you got, what was the answer, right or was it wrong? So in organizations, if I ask you what's the answer, immediately I'm on, I've got to now come up with. So we create answering machines in organizations that just come up with answers and don't come up with questions.
Yeah.
So if I were to ask you, Matt, you're not on the hook for this at all. Okay. I really just want out of your head, what are the possibilities? How many possibilities are to solve this problem?
Yeah.
Your brain goes to a place of comfort and says, well, I'm not on the hook for a decision. It's just literally, well, we could do this. We could possibly do this. We could do this. We could do this. And all of a sudden now you're generating ideas and you're generating creativity. There comes a point where we need to then prioritize those things.
Yeah.
But what I'm doing is I'm rewarding you for thinking better rather than just come up with an answer. So the more questions you can ask somebody And, like, why do we do this? Okay, well, that's, again, not a horrendous question, but what would be a better one?
Yeah.
How has this thing arrived? What happened before? What, you just explore these questions and get to a place of clarity. And Hal Gregerson runs this little exercise where he gets Fortune 500 bosses just to do an experiment. They don't leave a room for 2 hours until they've exhausted all the possible questions to get to the one question they need to ask before they answer it. Which could be a bit laborious, I think, because like a 2-year-old asking questions for no reason, why is probably. But get good at questions. If you get good at questions, I've found it elevates your life. You connect with people, you find out more. Get smart with questions. You can ask the same thing 15 different ways and get 15 different answers.
Yeah.
So what I do is I give groups tools, methods to work it out for themselves as a start point. And very quickly you'll find them getting into the habit of going, oh no, what could we possibly do? How might we possibly do that? Okay, if we're not, so we're going to a bit of a behavioural change in terms of asking questions. But if we ask different question, it would change your life.
Dan, thank you so much for today. Your insights into that and into leadership, and I think the big takeaway is learning to ask better questions. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Balanced Ambition podcast. I genuinely hope the stories inspire you as much as they inspire me. If you found value in today's conversation, please share it with a friend. And remember, by subscribing, you won't miss an episode, and it would truly mean the world to me. Stay balanced, and I'll see you next time.